Kul siru, awalam yasiru, and afalam yasiru. You have gone through this phrase a lot of time, I'm sure. And if you are memorizing the Quran, then you might be struggling to track which one is where. In today's video, guys, I'm going to share with you a trick that will help you differentiate and locate exactly which variant of this phrase is where. First of all, we're gonna divide it into three groups. First one is Kul siru group. Second one, awalam or afalam yasiru group. And the third one, which is the subgroup of Awalam Afalam Yasiru group, it's called Kanu Ashadda group. Okay, this subgroup I just created at the last moment because at some places I'll realize that along with Awalam or Afalam Yasiru, we have some similarities in the ending part also. And that's when I decided I should create a subgroup of, you can say, a subgroup of Awalam Yasiru or Afalam Yasiru. Let me explain these groups one by one. First, we have Kul Siru group. It came at these four places in the Quran. As you can see, first time it came in Surah An'am, then it came in Surah Naml, Ankabut, and then last at the Rum. Let's look at Surah An'am. The version that came in Surah An'am is Kul Siru fil Ardi, Thumma Anzuru Kayfa Kana Akibatul Mukaththibin. Okay, in this version of Kul Siru, we have something unique. Here we have Thumma Anzuru. And this is the only time in the Quran that Kul Siru came with Thumma Anzuru. At all the other places, it came as Fanzuru. So we can link this to the Haruf Tahajji. We can say that Thumma, as Surah An'am comes first, this version is the first in Kul Siru group. So we can say that Thumma Anzuru, here we have Thumma Anzuru. And in all the other versions, we're gonna have Fanzuru. Now the ending part of this Kaifa Kana Akibatul Mukaththibin is similar to the one that came in Surah Naml, which is Kul Siru fil Ardi Fanzuru Kaifa Kana Akibatul Mujrimin. Now let's differentiate these two. If you look at Surah An'am, we have Mukaththibin. We can link this to the ayat that just came before this, because this is the starting of Surah An'am. Kul Siru fil Ardi, this ayah is the 11th ayah of Surah An'am, almost the beginning. But if you look at the 5th ayah of Surah An'am, فَقَدْ كَذَّبُوا بِالْحَقِّ لَمَّا جَاءَهُم. We have كَذَّبُوا. When you are reciting this surah, I want you to have this kind of mindset. When you start this surah, you should have this in your mind that I'm going to have this mutashabih in the beginning of this surah. You know that it's going to be Thummanzuru because it's the first one, so we will have Thummanzuru. But for the ending part, you might not be sure whether it's Mukaththibin or Mujrimin. So the ayat before are going to tell you, and that ayah is Fakad Kadhabu. That Kadhabu, Mukaththibin, they're going to help you. Okay, now let's talk about the one in Surah Naml. In Surah Naml, we have Kul Siru fil Ardi Fanzuru. Okay, Fanzuru I already told you, because in all the other versions we are going to have Fanzuru. And then in the Mujrimin, again you can link this to ayat before that came in this surah. In Surah Naml, if you look at the ayat before, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned about Qawm Thamud and Qawm Lut. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroyed them because of their crimes. So those are the Mujrimins. That's why we're going to have Mujrimin. Okay, these two are done. Now we have remaining two in Surah Ankabut, one, and one in Surah Rum. Now these two are slightly different at the ending part, but the remaining is same. If you look at beginning part is Kul Siru fil Ardi Fanzuru. In Surah Ankabut, if you look at, we have Kul Siru fil Ardi Fanzuru Kaifa Bada al Khalqa. Now the starting part, because it's similar, so you are sure that it's going to be Kul Siru fil Ardi Fanzuru Kaifa. After Kaifa, we have Bada al Khalqa, and just before this ayah, the ayah we have is Awalam Yaraw Kaifa Yubdi'ullahu al-Khalqa. Yubdi'ullahu al-Khalqa Bada al-Khalqa. The ayah just before this is going to tell you that it's going to be Kaifa Bada al-Khalqa. Okay, you can link this to just ayah before. So whenever we are reciting, we definitely recite the previous ayah first, and then we will recite this ayah. So you can link this to the previous ayah, and then it's not going to be a problem for you. And last one in Surah Rum. In Surah Rum, things change because we have entered in the second group surah. Okay, let me explain this. Starting part, it's going to be similar. Kul siru fil ardi fanzuru kaifa. When we move forward, kaifa kana akibatul ladina min qabli. Now, where this part is coming from? because this is totally changed from the previous ayat of this group. You can link this with the second group, because in second group there is a rule. We are going to have this phrase again and again. And in Surah Rum, subhanallah, in Surah Rum, if you look at ayah 9 of Surah Rum, we have awalam yasiru, which is the second group. As I mentioned already, awalam or afalam, that's the second group. Let me explain the second group first, and then the ayat 42 of Surah Rum will make sense. Okay, in second group we have awalam or afalam at the starting, and then fayanzuru, not fanzuru, not summanzuru, we have fayanzuru. After that we will have kaifa kana akibatul ladina min qablihim or min qabli. Okay, as soon as we enter last 10 ajza, then there is an additional part, which is kanu ashadda minhum quwwa. Okay, and that is why I have created the subgroup of awalam or afalam yasiru. Okay, this is the really detailed work I have done. Almost it took me 1 week to analyze all these ayat. So many hours I spent thinking about this and creating this. I am hopeful that inshallah, if you understand it well, it will no longer be a challenge for you. Okay, now if you look at ayah 9, because second group ayah came first, awalam yasiru fil ardi fayanzuru kayfa kana aqibatul ladina min qablihim kanu ashadda. Because kanu ashadda, why? Because we have entered last 10 ajza, that's why there is an addition of kanu ashadda. The second group ayah came first, that's why the rule here that we are going to follow is of second group. That's why we have كيف كان عاقبة الذين من قبل كان أكثرهم مشركين. And mushrikin you can easily link with the ayah at before. If you look at, we have هل لكم مما ملكت أيمانكم من شركاء يشركون. We have, you can look at the ayat before, we have these kind of words. You can link it with those words. Okay, now let me explain the second group. Now, as I already mentioned, in second group we are going to have awalam or afalam yasiru fil ardi fayanzuru kayfa kana aqibatu alladhina min qablihim. And as soon as we enter the last 10 ajza, we have an additional phrase, which is kanu ashadda minhum quwwa. That's why I've created a subgroup of this, as I already mentioned. So let's talk about the Surah Yusuf. In ayah 109 of Surah Yusuf, the beginning part is totally changed, but this phrase starts after min ahlil qura wa ma arsalna min qablika illa rijalan nuhi ilayhim min ahlil qura afalam yasiru. So here we have afalam yasiru, and all the rules that I have told. Afalam yasiru fil ardi fayanzuru كيف كان عاقبة الذين من قبلهم. Now here we have وَلَدَارُ الْآخِرَةِ خَيْرٌ لِلَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. The more prominent word here is dal. This is the first time that we are having afalam yasiru or awalam yasiru, the ayah of second group. Basically the first time came in Surah Yusuf, and the last time it came where? In Surah Muhammad. Yes, right. And there too we have with the word dal, dammar Allah. These two are not challenging to memorize, because if you look at the shape of dal, it's like a bracket. The starting bracket in Surah Yusuf, Darul Akhirati Khair, and the last one in Surah Muhammad, dammar Allah alayhi. So we can easily link this to this one. Now let's talk about the ayat that came in between these ayat, because those are actually the challenging one to do. And an important thing I want to mention here is the main goal, the main aim for sharing these videos is that I want to help you, but at the same time I want to inspire you to create these kinds of tricks for yourself as well. Looking at these tricks, you can easily create for yourself the ayat that you are struggling with. If you look at and observe, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala left a lot of hints that help us memorizing these surah. I didn't learn it from somewhere. I just observed, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showed me these hints. You can create more better hints than me, because I don't know Arabic much. So maybe you can create more better hints if you know the translation as well. Second time it came in Surah Hajj, and this is the only time that it doesn't follow the rule of group second. And the reason why it doesn't follow the rule is inside the translation of this. If you look at afalam يسيروا في الأرض فتكون لهم قلوب يعقلون بها أو آذان يسمعون بها فإنها لا تعمى الأبصار ولكن تعمى القلوب التي في الصدور. So there is a mention of blindness of heart. So they can't look, they can't observe. That's why we don't have fayanzuru. Usually we have in this, the rule is afalam yasiru or avalam yasiru fil ardi fayanzuru kayfa kana. Okay, but here we don't have fayanzuru because la ta'mal absar walakin ta'mal qulub allati fi sudur. That's why the exceptional case, this is the only time here. Now let's talk about the subgroup of Avalam Yasiru or Afalam Yasiru, which is Kanu Ashadda group, because we have entered last and Adza. As soon as we enter last and Adza, we are basically in Avalam Afalam Yasiru, but a subgroup of Avalam Yasiru, which is Kanu Ashadda group. So first time it came in Surah Rum, ayah number 9, as I already mentioned when I was talking about the first group, because this subgroup I just created at the last moment. So I won't be talking much about this group, but it definitely help you if you have this in your mind that there is a subgroup and this is like that. So in Surah Rum, if you look at ayah number 9, we have Avalam Yasiru fil Ardi fayanzuru. From the previous rule, كيف كان عاقبة الذين من قبلهم كانوا أشد منهم قوة. Now if you look at Surah Fatir in Juz 22, almost at the ending of Surah Fatir and Juz 22, before Surah Yasin, we have أولم يسيروا في الأرض فينظروا كيف كان عاقبة الذين من قبلهم فكانوا أشد منهم قوة. Here we have va. First time we have كانوا أشد منهم قوة. Here we have وَكَانُوا أَشَدَّ مِنْهُمْ قُوَّةً. And the reason you can link this with the name of the juz. What's the name of juz 22? وَمَنْ يَقُنُتْ. Yes, you are right. وَمَنْ يَقُنُتْ. So we have وَكَانُوا أَشَدَّ مِنْهُمْ قُوَّةً. Okay. Now in Surah Ghafir, we have two versions of this. First is with awalam and second one is with afalam. Okay, and that's also I couldn't able to come up with a justification how we can differentiate these two. Maybe you can. So I struggle with this. To sorry if I couldn't able to come up with it, but
So how I do this is I basically just do the reverse huruf tahajji and extra letters. So normally we say that the second verse, the huruf tahajji is after and there's extra words. Whereas in this situation it's like the opposite. For example, أولم يسيروا في الأرض فينظروا كيف كان عاقبة الذين كانوا من قبلهم. In the second one there's no كانوا, it's just من قبلهم. Then you have كانوا أكثر منهم. In the second one, in the first one you have كانوا هم, you have the extra hum, again extra. Then you have آثارا is same for both of them. And then in the first one you have فأخذهم الله, in the second one you have فما أغنى. So how I remember this is because فأخذهم الله in the first picture, it comes in the second ayah as well, so it comes 2 times. Can you see in the first ayah 21, it says وآثارا في الأرض فأخذهم الله بذنوبهم, and the next ayah straight after that it says تأتيهم رسلهم بالبينات فكفروا فأخذهم الله. So I just remember فأخذهم الله comes twice in the first one, and then in the second one it's going to be فما أغنى. So just basically you have to remember that the first one, the first picture, there's going to be extra word, it's going to be كانوا, and there's going to be an extra hum. I don't know if that makes sense, but sometimes you just gotta kind of force it to make sense.
if you follow these hints and tricks, that will definitely help you. This is just an add-on. At the end, memorization is only done by you. You can just think about this as a supplement. This is going to speed up the process of your memorization. It's going to make this easier for you to memorize it. If you find this helpful, I want you to share it with someone who is struggling to memorize these mutashabihat. I'll see you in the next episode.